Welcome, everyone. So pleased to have Troy Love here again. This is the fourth week of the month. We're already, cruising through January, and I have exciting news. The attachment wounds work group will be starting February 7th. It's a 6-week course working through in a deeper way with a workbook. Troy will be leading this starting February 7th. So you can find that on Seeking Integrity. So those like Out of the Doghouse, Sex Addiction 101, Porn Addiction 101, which we have more of those starting again, as well, our 6-week psychoeducation. So not treatment, not therapy, but great information and insights that can help you on your journey. So please check those out. So again, on seekingintegrity.com, they're via Zoom, so you can be anywhere in the world and join. We're really excited to have this one. This will be the inaugural launch of this one, first but not last, and so we're really excited about that. So take a peek at those, and we've got more courses that are being developed as well. So Troy, we've got questions.
Hi.
Assuming I do all, in quotes, the work required to stop my acting out behavior and get out of the doghouse, what are the things that my partner would need to do to be part of the relationship again? What are the things my partner would need to do to be part of the relationship again? Whoa. Maybe I'm reading into this. What are your thoughts?
Oh, so my sarcastic response is nothing. It's all on you, man. But that's not true. So it takes two to make a relationship work. And that's why we really do encourage the partners to find a qualified therapist for themselves, because they're dealing with betrayal trauma. They're also dealing with stuff that they brought into the relationship before they knew you too, just like you are. And there is this tendency, I think, sometimes to want to put all of the responsibility on the addict and say that it's your burden to carry the relationship, and it's not. There's a lot that you need to do to like repair and work on your recovery and those kind of things. But the partner has some work to do too. The work of forgiveness, the work of healing through their own trauma that has happened, the work of learning how to create boundaries, learning how to express their needs and being able to talk about their feelings, both of you learning how to come to a place where you have a higher level of emotional intelligence. A lot of times, regardless of whether there's an addiction or not, a lot of couples really struggle with resolving conflict. And that's why 50% of marriages fail in the United States, because they don't know how to resolve conflict. And so through lots of different tools that lots of different relationship experts have, there's ways that couples can learn how to do that. But they come to a place where there's a higher level of emotional intelligence. There's a deeper level of trust built for both parties. And that takes effort. It can't be all on one person's shoulders. That takes effort on both parts. So, there's a journey. So having her, I'm assuming, we're using gender things here, but having your partner find a therapist, probably going after you've had some recovery under your belt, going to a couples counselor together and working through some of this stuff. A couples counselor who understands addiction is important. Having them find a support group that's for them. And we do have betrayed partner groups at sexandrelationshiphealing.com that are available for them to go, that are free, just like we have for the addicts. And so those are some of the things that we really encourage partners to do on their own, as they're doing their work too.
Yeah, and I think their work is really learning to find. I love that you shared the healthy boundaries. I think for a partner to be part of a relationship when there has been betrayal. It is about, what do you need to have for your safety? These aren't punitive, and if this, then you're just in the doghouse. It's about what is going to create safety for the partner, because you can't have a healthy relationship when there's fear and unsafe environment. So the forgiveness is something I do for myself. The other person may also benefit. The other person may not even know I did it. So that's a journey. But in order to have a safe space for the relationship, as Troy said, communication. How do you navigate that? So having the partner have support away from you, but that is, a safe space for that partner, is really critical. But what I was kind of caught with is, assuming I do all of this work, this sounds like I'm at the very beginning stage. I'm sitting, on the wall going, am I even going to take this step? So if you're planning what the partner has to do, I would invite you to put the focus back on you do the work or you don't do the work. At the end of the day, your relationship stands, in my opinion, zero chance of being successful if you don't do the work. So, and unfortunately, a lot of people think of relationships as disposable. So they go, well, if I just this is the problem, is this relationship. So I'm just going to get rid of this one and I'll go to the next one. And they repeat the same pattern. And the second relationship, or the third, or the 12th, is still in chaos. And, this is the ongoing pattern. So for us, that struggle with, compulsive behavior, problematic things, if we choose to take to the path of recovery, we can learn to live in integrity. Our program is called Seeking Integrity. That's because we all value that as part of our, that's really meaningful to me on a personal level, and we want to help other people find that. So relationships can heal, they can move forward in a different way. But if someone's in active addiction, I think there's very little chance for any kind of meaningful relationship, to move forward. That you guys can stay together, but there's never going to be that, that connection on a deeper level. Okay, what are the most important components? Oh, here you're going to have to rate them, Troy. So, of recovery for a man who has deep attachment sound, his wounds, I'm sure that's wounds. His mother died when he was 16 or 15, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get new eyes and everything. So I apologize when I stumble over things. And no one took care of his emotional needs. He made a conscious decision not to depend on other people. He's SA and PA and having a difficulty maintaining a relationship with me. Wow. That makes perfect sense that he made that decision, because people were going to hurt him. So,
The most important components of recovery. Wow. So wow. I guess the first thing, just like in the model that I use, the first thing that we do is we identify what the wound is, and we're honest about that. I have an abandonment wound, or I have a rejection wound, or I have a betrayal wound. And it's the same as like if you were going in and getting a diagnosis of some other ailment, that we have to kind of know what it is that we're dealing with, and we need to be able to tell the truth about that. And then you can make a decision about what you want to do with it. So so you've identified that he has a deep attachment wound. I'm wondering if he's identified that he has a deep attachment wound. And so that's probably the first. So honesty and being willing to identify that there is pain there. I was just talking to a client today who was working on doing a trauma egg, and it's so hard. It's so hard for that client to even want to acknowledge that there was any wounds, because it is so painful. Like she knows that there are, and yet she's like, when I look at the egg and I start to draw, it's like, it's so overwhelming. So The second piece, I think, is having self-compassion, which is so hard to do because a lot of times shame has woven itself into those wounds so much that we feel like I'm bad and I'm worthy and I can't lean on other people. I can't depend on other people to be there. I have to do it all by myself. And that's all shame-based. And so recognizing that there's shame that's very much playing a role in how we've been coping with our wounds. And the more that shame hijacks that, the more that our relationships are going to be severed and broken. And so it goes back to that honesty part of being honest about, yeah, there's shame there. There's shame there and there's pain there. How can I practice self-compassion and be kinder to myself? How can I practice being vulnerable and sharing my owie with you? And it's scary to do that, but just like little kids are really, I love how they run up and they want to show you their owie, and it's like they're, it's amazing. It's how can I share my owie with you? And how can I do it in a way that invites safety and healing for both of us? And so those I think are the top two. I mean, there's a million things, but honesty and self-compassion, probably the top two. And then we do the rest of the work.
Yeah, and he's still caught up in it sounds like he's still in active addiction, and so that gives us as addicts a safe place to go, so we don't have to, we can continue to compartmentalize and not deal with things because oh, this all gets to be too much. I thought it was interesting. So a trauma egg is an exercise that that therapists have can have clients do to identify those things. And you did mention that they draw. And I know that that's really important. You don't just write, because then it starts being, your thinking part of the brain. And when you're drawing, those things are coming up, and I remember people that like, they don't even remember drawing, like they get, so it's really tapping into a different space. But this is stuff that you absolutely want a qualified professional to be dealing with, because those are deep wounds. There's grief and there's loss and abandonment. I mean, that's a lot of stuff, and it makes perfect sense that the addiction has been, I always say, the maladaptive coping mechanism. That was the safe place for him. He didn't have anyone else. It was something that probably helped him just get to be an adult. So it's unpacking. I hope for you that you read Prodependence, because loving somebody and caring about them that is broken and has these deep wounds doesn't mean there's no pathology on you. It's you see things in this person he may not even see himself. So lots of resources, as Troy said, on sexandrelationshiphealing.com for both of you. Glad you're here too. So next question: what would be your advice on developing intimacy with my wife? Our D-Day is almost a year ago. I'm in recovery, have been to SILA and working with a CSAT, and my wife is also healing therapy. And I'm assuming intimacy, I don't know if you're talking about true intimacy, which is being known, or if you're talking about sex. So I'm not 100%, but let's dig into that one, please.
So intimacy, regardless of the level of it, and the deepest form of intimacy is sexual connection, requires safety for both you and your partner. And so in order to create that deeper level of intimacy, I need to be able to know that I can be open and real and share my delights and interests and my fears and all of that. And I'm not going to be shamed or judged. And so does my partner. My partner needs to be able to know the same. We need to be able to have boundaries around what I am comfortable doing and what I'm not comfortable doing. And my partner needs to be able to have the same, being able to be respectful and honor that without animosity and resentment, because that doesn't create safety. So when we're dealing with addiction and there's betrayal going on, it's a lot harder, I think, to be able to restore the trust and the safety in the relationship, but it's not impossible. I've seen couples who have some of the happiest marriages I've ever seen before, and they were in the darkest of dark places before. And it's because they both did their work. Both the husband and the wife did their work, and they worked through and did the things that they were taught to do in order to create safety again, and learned how to play. Um, Play is a huge part of that, and it's, we're a year in to this thing, and I know who you are, buddy, and I'm really proud of you. So I know you've been working on. Part of that is also recognizing that this is going to take some time. Um, I don't know your particular situation per se, but usually the addict has known that they've been dealing with the addiction for a really long time. And they've been working on and trying to figure this out. And it usually comes as a surprise to the partner. And so when the addict finally decides, I'm going to work on this, their recovery starts to look pretty, like when they're really serious, their recovery starts to speed up pretty fast, and they start to work on some things pretty quickly. But the wife is, or the partner has been blindsided, and so they have, like, the floor has just dropped out from under them, and so it can take them 2 to 3 years of solid, consistent behavior on the part of the addict before they're like, feel like they can be open and honest again. So it's just being patient with your partner, and also finding a therapist who works with with this kind of thing. That's really helpful. So somebody who understands addiction, looking for a sex therapist, not a sex addiction therapist, but a sex therapist might be something, if that is a struggle that you guys come into, of finding somebody who understands that, who can help you create language and talk around the things that you need to, so that you can have an understanding, and really taking a look at, what are we learning from this? What are we learning from this, our past, and how do we create a brand new relationship? Many therapists will say to you, like, your old marriage, your old relationship is dead. So we have to grieve that and say goodbye to that. And we learn from that, and we create something new, which is going to require a lot of open dialogue. You can't have shame in the way. You gotta deal with getting the shame out of the way. Um, I'm talking theoretical, but those are the things. You got to deal with the shame. You got to create safety, and there has to be a willingness for both parties.
I always think you were talking about dialogue, and I was like, it's communication, and like whether it's sexual or just intimacy, it's communication. You mentioned the old relationship is dead, yeah, and so you're building a new one. What do you both want for that? Like, do you have those conversations about, this is what I'm hoping for, this is what I'd like to work towards? Is that what you would like? Where's the negotiation on what you see, and how you move together, and move forward? And as you mentioned, Troy, the addict is known all the time long. So on day one can start moving, forward, and the partner got hit by a truck. And so, so there is a difference, on the journey. You guys can be on the same path, but there was a roller coaster. I love roller coasters, but it's the twin ones where, it was the Gemini at Cedar Point in Ohio. So if you ever go there, it's fun. But like, they'd be kind of racing, and one would get ahead, and then one would get back, and I think of that often with this journey. It's like you're both on the tracks, and you're moving forward together, and you end up at the same place, but sometimes one of you is ahead of the other one. And I think that it is, but dialogue, Dr. David Fawcett talks often in his webinars about sensate focus. So for reintegrating, Dr. Rob did a podcast with Doctors Bill and Ginger for CAW who talk about sexual reintegration. So if you're talking about that specific aspect, there are techniques that you can use. Sensate focus isn't about just, orgasm, and it's about, it's about touch, and it's communication, which I think it's really easy for an addict to be in their head and go, and shame and fear and whatever. And so, and I think it's very vulnerable for partners to also be willing to step into that space, but creating the environment, whether it's with a, sex therapist or a marriage therapist, to have the honest community, or if you go, we spend 20 minutes, a couple times a week, and we're going to talk about these issues, no shame, no, shame-free environment, but we really want to get to know each other, better, and what we're hoping for and what we're striving for, and see if, okay, we're not there yet, but but if this is the vision and we both are on that, we have that as our, we have our ways set for, this is where we want to go, how do we get there? So, but I mean, thanks for sharing. And and 1 year is that's real, that's really good, but it's also, if your partner got really traumatized a year ago, with a whole bunch of things. And for us, each day, every day is one day at a time, and they stack up. But for partners, it's a very different journey. So, okay. Good morning, Troy! Exclamation point. My attachment wounding is with my mother. I'm dealing with a lot of things from my past that is coming up doing this work, with finding peace. How do I open up communication with her to be able to put some of this to rest and behind us? I know she did all she could and the best that she could. She has loved me unconditionally and has made that very clear. But how do we move past all of this in a healthy way? And how do we do it without me wounding her? That's a great question. So,
Good morning, by the way, buddy. It's nice to see you. Um, I love the last part. How do I do it without wounding her? That takes a high level of emotional intelligence on both parts. And it also requires your mom to be willing to listen, to your wounds. Part of the reason why I talk about the wounds the way that I do is I do it in a way that it tries not to blame. So I'll try really hard to tell people, don't put the ed at the end of these wounds. Words like neglected and rejected and abandoned and betrayed, because that ed has a connotation of blame. And as we know from past things, blame always will invite conflict, because it's going to rub up against the other person's wounds, and they're going to protest, and we're not going to have the dialogue that we're wanting to have. And so part of it is being able to talk about the wound itself, and part of that maybe is how the wound happened, but without blaming. And so part of it is asking permission. So when we're going to have one of these conversations, we ask permission. Hey, mom, I have some deep wounds. I've been doing some work around it, and I'm wondering if I can share with you part of my wounds and part of the work that I'm doing. And part of it involves you. Would it be okay if I shared this with you? And sharing, it sounds like your mom has unconditional love for you, which is wonderful. I've never been a fan of like confronting parents or other people, because it usually doesn't go well. Doesn't usually have the result that you're wanting. So part of it is you doing some heart work about, well, what am I hoping to have at the end of this conversation? Am I wanting to have a deeper connection with my mom? Am I wanting to just have her validate that, yeah, that was really painful, and honey, I'm really sad that happened to you? Is it that you need something from her? What is it that you are wanting? And coming clear with that, and maybe even sharing that at the beginning of the conversation with her and say, What I'm really needing is just some validation, or really needing some just a hug, like at the end, like I need to be heard, whatever that happens to be for you. Um, and being able to have some dialogue around that without the blame. And I know that's hard to do. But when we talk about the wounds, when we talk about how much it hurts, and the sadness, and the core beliefs that have come up, and the shadows of shame that have hijacked how we've come to believe about ourselves, that really doesn't have anything to do with the other person or what they did or didn't do. It's really what we've come to believe about ourselves. And so as I'm sharing my woundedness with these people who've been a part of that journey, I'm sharing it from a way of like, so when I grew up in a home where there was a lot of domestic violence, I grew up believing that there wasn't anybody that would show up for me, including sometimes you, Mom. I had a hard time turning to you, believing that you were going to be there for me. And that's carried on now that I'm nearly 50. It's carried on. And here's how it shows up in my life today. And so I'm not really spending a whole lot of time like trying to rehash the past, but I'm sharing like this is how it affects me today. And this is what I could really need from you and us today moving forward. So hopefully that helps. I think you know how to get a hold of me, buddy, if you want more clarification on that. Um, but really, it's trying to do it without blame, and doing it lovingly, and talking about the wound and the pain itself, not what happened.
Yeah, like, I have a follow-up question for you. How do you gauge if the other person will be able to tolerate that, even like even if you are doing everything, following the script, so to speak? And I almost think I would have to have a script, because it would be challenging not to go into the, well, you know what I mean? Like, but how do you gauge if the other person um, is going to be able to have the strength to hear that? Because when you were going like, is it okay if we talk about that? Like, I would be so darn curious, and I would need to know. So even if I wasn't really ready for this difficult conversation, I would probably say yes. So how do you? I'm trying to figure out how you set this up to hopefully get your needs met in this conversation. Because if you're having this conversation, you are seeking to have something validated, or affirmed, or something, or bridging a gap. I'm just wondering what you would suggest to hopefully make it as helpful for both parties as possible.
Um, so in this case, you know your mom, so you've known her your whole life, so you might be able to assess whether she has the capacity to be able to hear these kind of things. There are some people in my life that they just don't. Um, and when I've attempted, it just doesn't go well. And so I've just learned like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure out another way of resolving this without you. Because you just like, you don't have the ability to be empathic. You don't have the ability to be open and share your side, and those kind of things. And so that does not create safety for me. And so I can't, I want to, but I can't share it with you. And the other part is to be able to really be clear about what you want and say that at the beginning of the thing. So I've had to have some conversations with some people um that I'm sure it wasn't happy for them to hear, but as I'm doing it, I'm saying like, look, this is my stuff. I want to own my stuff. I recognize that this is my stuff, not yours. You may bump up against my wounds sometimes, but this is my stuff and I'm working through it. And so doing a lot of the ownership part. Your follow-up is that you're living with your mom, which
Mm.
also makes it hard. Um, so um, but being able to help the other person say like, this really isn't about you. Like, you may have been
Mm.
a figure in this,
Yeah.
you may have played a role in this, you may have had a predominant feature in this part, but this really is my stuff that I'm trying to work through. Can you hold space for me as I'm trying to talk out loud and help you kind of hear what's going on inside of my heart, so you can understand where I'm coming from and why this is hard for me? Can you hold space for me for that? And it may come across blamey, and if that's the way it is, that's not what I mean. I'm needing to be able to have somebody hold space and hear me as I'm working through my stuff, and it does impact you. But at the beginning, it's like clarifying that and being upfront about that. That helps the other person kind of say, okay, like this is what we're getting into. I don't quite know what. Of course, I want to hold space, but I'm hearing that you're saying what you're needing, and it also helps you stay on target, because our motivations in a conversation can get hijacked really fast. And so if I'm stating what I'm wanting and the outcome I'm hoping at the beginning of the conversation, it helps me stay on target and keep heading towards that direction throughout the whole thing. So I'm going to talk about my wounds, and the script is the finding peace worksheet, by the way. I'm going to talk about the facts. These are the facts, the things that I can hear, see, touch, space, and hear, smell. This is the wound that got created because of that. And these are the core beliefs that have gotten activated because of it, that I've come up with in myself. These are my emotions that I feel about it. These are the shadows of shame that have hijacked it. And this is how I then behave in a way. I do this in hopes that you will do this or you won't do that. And what I'm really needing is that. So you could use the finding peace worksheet to have a conversation with your mom. And you could help her understand, like, this is my stuff. So can I share with you what I'm working on?
That was brilliant, and I think that was really helpful. And I think having the script, because I think it's really easy to go, to go, oh, start reading the other person and take something in, and then having the message get off track or getting into the emotion. So that was really helpful. Thank you. Okay, so my essay husband has been dealing with severe shame despite doing everything his CSAT and sponsors have recommended. He continues to be moody, disconnected, self-loathing, be the victim. Is it common for addicts to use this behavior to manipulate their partner? Yes. To keep them away and avoid intimacy? Yes. I thought it was just severe depression, but now my gut is telling me he is manipulating me, and it could be both. What are your thoughts?
All right. So what I'm reading through all of that is he is riddled with shame. His shame is causing him to do the self-loathing. His shame does contribute to the sense of moodiness, playing the victim. It can contribute to the manipulation as well, like gaslighting is a thing that they will do, and the lying. Like, I lie because I'm ashamed of telling the truth. I lie because I'm afraid of what will happen. But that's all shame-based, which is honestly a thing that we all struggle with, whether you're an addict or not. Everybody has shame, but when you are an addict, there is a tremendous amount of shame that has been woven into this addiction. In fact, part of the addiction is being addicted to shame, which is a very strange thing. Because you would think that we wouldn't want it. Well, you also would think that you wouldn't want all the stuff that comes with acting out either, but we are addicted to the shame. We're addicted to the self-loathing, even though we don't want it. And so, and as a consequence to that shame, it contributes to the severe depression. So in the model that I use it, that creates these mutated emotions, the shame just continues to generate these neurological links in my brain that say that I'm not enough and I don't matter and I can't do anything right and you're not going to love me and you should probably leave me. And with those electrical thought impulses running through my head all the time, that depletes the serotonin, that depletes the dopamine. Of course, I don't feel good. And then I'm not owning that, right? I'm shaming myself, but I'm not owning that. And so then I can be manipulative for you. So I'm sad. I'm glad that he's doing the things with his CSAT and his sponsor, but the work really is around the shame. So the Finding Peace workbook helps with that. Dr.
Eddie Caparucci, the inner child stuff.
His work about inner child stuff is also talks about that. Like we're dealing with how to learn how to love ourselves, so that we can be more loving people for others. And that's what's hijacking him. So he might be doing all the recovery stuff, but what's going to hijack it every time is his lack of ability to believe that he's worthy of love and belonging, and so are you. And so if he can't believe that he's worthy of love and belonging, and he will continue to trip up, and we all make mistakes. But if he can't figure that out, that's going to sabotage that, and it's going to be a long haul. So we do the work at the beginning to like stop the addiction, but the deeper work is the work of shame and shame recovery.
Yeah, I seriously consider the attachment wound work group. He would be an excellent candidate for that. So, and it is, it does get to be this little spiral of, I feel so bad, but then it is, as you say, it keeps, it avoids intimacy, because if I'm feeling so bad, I'm keeping away from you, I'm not sharing with you the real stuff, like all of the stuff that Troy was just talking about, with someone, stepping into a space with, with mother of, like, talking about my wounds. That's how you create intimacy, is, being able to share those things. And but going to the, oh, woe is me, is self-centered on some level, even if it is shame, because it's still all about him, and not about, you and the relationship and everything else. So I'm hopeful that, and he may have, clinical depression. Having a qualified, professional that understands addiction, not just your general practitioner, evaluate them. There may be something real going on chemically, and even a short-term antidepressant or something. Looking at all of these things, it's complicated. And as Troy's just said, stopping the behavior, that's just the beginning. That's okay. We've now stopped that. But what are we going to do to do life differently? Because we were using that a lot for our coping mechanisms. So how do we do things differently? So, but I'm really happy to hear that he's doing what his CSAT and sponsors are recommending. I mean, that's good, because there's a lot of people that, aren't willing to do that. So somebody asked for a further explanation of the trauma egg. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. So the trauma egg is something that CSATs use. Other people who are trauma informed therapists also use. In a nutshell, that's a different analogy, but we get a big piece of paper and we draw an egg on it, and then we draw cracks in the egg, and then for each one of those little spaces in the egg, we're going to draw some traumatic event that has happened in our life. And then through therapy, whether it's group therapy or individual therapy, EMDR, like whatever the modality is that therapist is specialized in, the person will work through those different traumatic events as part of the healing process. But even just looking at the egg itself and recognizing, like when I did it, at first I'm like, wow, this is a big piece of paper. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to fill it up. And then as I'm filling it up and it's getting like almost full, I was like, whoa, like stuff happened to me. And so there's all kinds of things that come out of doing that activity, and your therapist can guide you through it so that you do it in a safe way. But it is a tool that we use to help people with the trauma side of their life and helping them see it and then working through it. I know several therapists who use the attachment wounds as part of the trauma egg. So they'll have them color in like, what parts are rejection wounds and
Oh,
what
that's a
parts
great
are
idea.
abandonment wounds. And then
Yeah.
we target some of the big ones. And what tends to happen with trauma is when we start to work through one traumatic event, it can heal some of the others. So you don't have to like work through every little teeny thing throughout the whole thing, but that has helped therapists like compartmentalize the work so that we can work with rejection or abandonment and make it a little bit easier, streamline the recovery process.
Well, and I think what you shared too with like, well, I've got a big piece of paper, what the heck? I think so many people, and this is natural, like this, I don't have any trauma. We hear this all the time with clients that are coming to seeking integrity. I don't have any traumas, or they know one, like there was one thing, and you're going like, but you can fill up the whole egg when you start really paying attention to those nuanced things. And particularly, like I mentioned earlier too, it is about drawing, because that accesses your brain differently. There is also another component. There's an angel egg, and some
Mhm.
therapists use that, where it's people who have been there. Like I remember one story someone shared, like home was not okay, but this person really loved books, and the librarian was, like would save the special books for this particular person. That person really helped them have a safe place, even though it was escaping into books. But that I think that librarian probably knew that things were not good at home too, and was a safe connection. Like it's just those kind of people where, because sometimes people, and someone shared earlier that there's no trust because no one was ever safe. But you start doing an angel egg and you go, oh, there were people along the way that were able to to be there for me, even if it's, in a limited capacity, like a librarian. But there were, a teacher, whatever, there's people along the path. Next, but I love the coloring them, with attachment wounds. Like I'm sure you go, oh, like, oh, look at all the blue ones that are, whatever, but I think that would be really, I've not heard of that. I really like that idea too. So okay, the next one. I'm a partner of a porn addict, chronic objectifier in recovery, 2 years sober. My husband has stopped his acting out behaviors, but has not dealt with the difficulty with communication, intimacy, openness, etc. The stuff under the iceberg. He has admitted never feeling safe in any close relationship, does not trust people he's close to, and admits to having never felt safe with me. My question is, what would you recommend for a couple in recovery where both people do not feel safe with each other, yet there is still love and hope? We seem to be stuck at the I don't feel safe with you part, and then stopping us from leaning into all sorts of things we need to do in order to recover. Thank you so much for all you guys do. So that's so this feels like, when we talk about attachment styles, um, is that what you're
Yeah,
thinking? Yeah.
he has an avoidant attachment style. He can admit though that he doesn't feel safe, which is huge, right? So therapists who are trained in emotionally focused couples therapy might be helpful for you. But the truth is, like, so he can admit that he doesn't feel safe. The next part of that is, and what I need to feel safer is
Oh, yeah.
what? Um, so I'm really feeling uncomfortable, and Sue Johnson will talk about slicing it thinner. Like, so,
Mm.
sometimes we have, this is a really big topic, and so I'm going to slice it thinner. So I don't feel safe with you because blah, whatever it is that I'm not feeling safe. And again, doing it from a not blamey place. I'm not feeling safe because my rejection wound is really raw right now, and I'm really like, I have these voices that are saying that I'm not enough, and I don't know if you're going to actually hold space for me, and if you're going to react and get angry, and so I'm really scared. Like, those are things that you can say, I don't feel safe. And what I need is, and being able to share what I need. So what I need that would help me feel a little safer is blank, and filling in that part of them. So he's having difficulty with that because he's I mean, I don't know him from Adam, but I'm guessing that what's going on is that he's scared to vocalize what he needs, because maybe in his past those needs have never been met, and so he comes to this core belief of, well, it doesn't matter what I say, it's never going to get filled anyway. the impotent one can really hijack his ability to like speak up and say stuff. So that would be part of his work, is like, okay, so I could admit that I don't feel safe. What does that feel like? Where do I feel that in my body?
Mm.
All that mindfulness stuff. What wound is that attached to? What would help me feel a teeny tiny bit safer right now? How do I articulate that? How do I say that out loud to you? And then you hold space.
And I was caught with I have never felt safe. And to me, I always and nevers are words that I,
Language of impotent one. Those are language
yes,
of the
yes,
impotent one.
right. So I would almost be curious to go, okay, never is, really forever. So was there nothing, let's look at, was there anything where you can go, well, I felt safe with that, like, is there any opportunity to kind of break through that shell of like, it's never safe. Well, is it safe this, or is it safe that? And find, are there any breadcrumbs of safety that you can identify for each other? Or, so along with what do we need to feel safe, is there any opportunity to look back and go, well, I felt safe in that moment, okay, great. What were we doing? How did we get to that point? So that you could possibly build on that. But and I find it interesting that but you both want to be together, so there has to be something, because if it's never safe and it's forever been not good for either of you, I just, then it's kind of like, what's the point, so but I'm really glad you're here and you're asking those questions. But I think that there's hope to build on it. It's just finding, and has difficulty with communication, of course, so what do you need to do to create a safe space to be able to talk about this in just little tiny bits and pieces, and go, okay, we built some safety there, okay, we can do that again. So
Even like this sensate practice of like just holding each other's hand. Like, let's hold each other's hand for a minute and just talk about the safety that comes up, or the lack of safety that comes up. And can you put words to that? Like, what happens? Does it feel safe when I do this? Does it feel safe when I do that? Those kind of things. And being able to put words to what safety looks like, feels like, as well as what happens when he doesn't feel safe.
and that, yeah, and I hadn't thought about it, and it doesn't feel safe to hold hands, so like that would be really valuable information of, even, something as simple as holding hands. So okay, my SA husband started a strong recovery program after discovery in August of 2019. There have been a lot of ups and downs, but he and we had an upward track in September of 21. And then a few weeks ago, he deleted emails related to past acting out, which, per our agreement about transparency, he should have talked to me about first. Since his second event, he has been defensive and has really struggled to be empathetic to my betrayal trauma being reactivated. I feel like the work of the past 2 years has been almost wiped out. It it feels like I'm dealing with a child again, which is so discouraging. He is involved in individual therapy, a good group and sponsor. He's agreed to go for an intensive workshop in March. Is there hope for the character change to really stick?
Yes, there's hope. I don't think Tammy and I would be doing this job if we didn't think there was hope. So I'm not quite sure, like, if those were emails that were like from the past, or if those were something that happened recently. What I'm hearing is that he's had a shame. He's been hijacked by shame. And I'm reading into stuff, so I'm just giving you my hypothesis. Like, he was maybe sick of looking at those emails because of what it reminded him of, and so he deleted those. Didn't talk to you about them, which that was part of the agreement. So there's betrayal there. Like, he did break the agreement, and then maybe feeling shame that I didn't keep my agreement, and I what kind of a schmuck of a husband am I? Because I like all that, and I can't talk to you about why I did that. Like all of that is what I'm hearing is like he's being hijacked by shame, which will unravel connection, and it will unravel his ability to be all honest and open around what's going on with him. And when that happens, like we revert back to our childlike behaviors of hiding and blaming and protesting and all those kind of things as a way of dealing with what we're struggling with. So you're seeing the consequences of what's going on. Hopefully he can like step into that and say, look, oh, I am like the key to getting out of shame is ownership and empathy. Like, so owning that I did it without letting my judge beat the crap out of me and telling me that I suck. Like, yes, I did it. That was not okay. And I can see that what I did really caused you harm and has impacted you and created or reopened some betrayal wounds for you. And that's how we heal it. So in order to get that to work, though, I have to recognize, oh my gosh, my shadows have hijacked me again. And look at the way that I'm behaving. This isn't the man that I want to be. What can I do to breathe into that and try again?
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of curious why he didn't delete them in September of 2019 after the discovery, that those are still hanging around. I think a fair question for you, you know, yes, he could have and should have clearly, you know, it was wounding to you because it was outside the agreement, but um, I'd be curious, you know, as Troy said, you know, was it he was tired of seeing them? Like, I would have wanted them gone longer ago. So, um, I'd be curious to find out from your standpoint, like, you know, why now? Like, why, you know, what was coming up for him that he decided to attend to those, especially behind your back? So, I find that I get a lot of mileage out of being curious, using the story I'm telling myself, because to Troy's point, you know, if I'm on the attack, which you are absolutely triggered, and I'm not minimizing your right to do that, but it's like, yeah, the story I'm telling myself when you do things behind my back and against our contract is that there is no hope and that you're reverting to old behavior. I mean, and that's different than why did you do that? I don't, you know, so it's more likely to provide a dialogue and a space for moving forward. And I think, you know, I've been talking to a number of people recently again about, you know, the how do we move forward from this? You know, the why he did it, you know, his sponsor, his therapist, they can, you know, can do that. But how do we, you know, how do we, where we are right now, how do we move forward, you know, in a different way? And what, you know, if that agreement he clearly violated, so, you know, what are the consequences for that? Now he's going to a, you know, to a retreat or something. But also, what do you need to have safety? So, I mean, are all the emails gone? I sure hope so. Um, but you know, what is it you're looking for to do that? And unfortunately, you know, healing from addiction is not a upward track always. You know, there are, you know, it's a windy road. I have a visual. I hiked the Grand Canyon, and the path is very windy and steep. And you know, there are times when you're on kind of a flat vista and you're able to look out and go, wow, I've made a lot of progress. And then you look up and go, oh, you know, and that's recovery. You know, it's a journey, and there are people along the way to support us. Um, be grateful for the progress. He's got something to lean back into. I know lots of people also. I mean, I hear that he was continuing to do the work, but I know lots of people too that kind of rest on their laurels, you know, where they get to a point and go, oh, I've done all this work and I'm doing great. And they quit doing clearly addict brain. That worked really well for me. So I'm going to stop doing that, you know? So a lot of the things is we have to, you know, we have to keep leaning into the, you know, we have a sponsors, we have people to connect with. We have to keep doing the work, and we can change. There's lots of hope, you know. As Troy mentioned earlier too, we both know lots of people who have navigated this and really have a much better, more honest, deeper relationship than they ever had or could have had they not entered into recovery, because there was always that compartmentalization and lying. So what are successful steps to heal attachment wounds?
Well, I have a book called the Finding Peace Workbook. You can find that on Amazon. That lays out the process. In March in Prescott, I have a retreat that's based on the book that you're welcome to go look at. I'll put the link in the chat in a sec. But the simple process, not simple, but the process is identifying the wound, naming what it is, and then beginning to do the wound care depending on what that wound happens to be. And there's needs associated with that, and finding ways to get those needs met in a healthy way. For the guys, we are having the healing class that's coming up with seekingintegrity.com as well. And then we hope that in the future we'll do that for women as well. This is a new one. So for now, those are some of the resources we have.
So the next and final question is, I'm an addict in recovery for 2 months. My wife asking me if I had intrusive, 1 year and 2 months. Thank you. For my wife asking me if I had intrusive thoughts. Last night I was open with her to tell her I get thought when I feel rejected. I get those intrusive thoughts when I feel rejected and angry and lonely. I shared with her my thoughts yesterday and got kicked out of the bed. I feel I hurt her more and more. How do I share with her and be open with my thoughts and less impact on her?
Well, this is we have this conversation all the time. So Tammy mentioned being curious. So the part of the curiousness is, okay, honey, what do you want to know about those intrusive thoughts? The truth is, we all have intrusive thoughts. All of us do. Some of them sexually related, some of them not. So the answer is yes, I did. I managed them really well. So part of that is having a sponsor. I really talk to the guys about having a sponsor that you can process some of these, so when you probably need to share these with your wife and when you don't need to. The wives are really scared about your thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. Like, what we do with them is something different. But the wives are really scared about that. And so they want to know, like, what were you thinking? All those kind of things. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily healthy to know that. Tammy can speak up around that on her side, but there's a fear underneath that. And so trying to dig down a little bit underneath the question of, like, what's the question behind the question? What are you scared of? Are you picking up on something? Are you noticing something that's going on? And what do you need that I can create safety for you for? Because the answer is yes, we have intrusive thoughts. And I'm trying to manage them the best that I can. And sometimes I do a really great job and sometimes I don't.
And I think it's okay to say it. And I'm more likely to struggle when I feel angry and lonely. And so I have an opportunity when I'm starting to feel angry and lonely, which, halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, stressed, like, it's a key component of 12-step recovery. Like, we work really hard on not having those things happen, because with them we're more vulnerable. I shared this with a partner because a partner reached out to me and was asking about intrusive thoughts and, like, wanted to know. And I said, okay, if I told you for 30 days that you cannot think about she was married, so husband's addiction, like, zero thoughts of his addiction for 30 days, could you do it? And that was a good analogy for her, because no, those thoughts pop into her mind about him and his addiction and his recovery and all. You cannot think about his addiction or his recovery. 0, 30 days. you know, it's probably impossible. So, but again, what do you do with those? And, you know, and there's all kinds of techniques, whether it's, you know, you call your sponsor, you know, doing a meditation. One, I don't do well with meditations, but I have a couple of things I can do. And one of them is I let those thoughts pass over me like a babbling brook. And I have that visual of like, oh, those thoughts go, like poof, they're gone, they're downstream. I don't have to hold on to them. And so there's lots of things that I can do rather than going, oh, intrusive thought, I can't think about this, which of course, then all I think about is the intrusive thought, you know? So, yeah, I mean, thoughts, you know, are not in inner circle. There's a reason, you know, that because, you know, I mean, I don't know a single human that can control their thoughts, you know, I just don't. Dr. Spock on, or Mr. Spock on Star Trek probably could, but other than that, I don't know. So it's one of those things where, you know, that is, so I agree with Troy. It would be, you know, I want to heal this, you know, my thoughts are, you know, I'm going to work on this, but I'm sure your wife was looking for safety, and that now is stuck in her, your intrusive thoughts are now stuck in her brain and intruding on it. So I'm sorry. So there's attachment wounds. Oh, sorry. Attachment wounds work group is starting. Dog out of the doghouse is starting again soon. Sex addiction 101, porn addiction 101. And join us again. So Troy will be back on this the fourth week of February, but he also is twice a month on Thursdays working with the trade partners on drop-in groups on sex and relationship healing. And every Friday he's on sex and relationship healing with the guys on the drop-in group. So thank you all for joining, and I will see you again, my friend. Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Bye.